Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday morning, December 15th. Again, a lot to talk about this morning. We have the major storm system has now begun to impact the Mid-Atlantic region and the northeastern part of the nation. This is the same storm that caused some heavy snow out in the western states, then the Rocky Mountain states, northern plains, upper part of the Midwest. It will produce some significant snow across the interior sections of the Mid-Atlantic and northeast U.S. over the next 12 to 24 hours or so. An icy mess occurred earlier this morning in the northern and western suburbs of D.C. Right now there's a mix of snow and sleet in the Philadelphia suburbs, and heavy snow is about to break out of upstate Pennsylvania and certainly later on today into tonight and Friday across the upstate region of New York and interior New England as well. Some areas will certainly see more than a foot of snow in the interior part of the northeast U.S. We have a very interesting weather pattern, not only today and tomorrow in the short term, but longer term. We've been talking about a major Arctic air outbreak later next week, leading right into the Christmas weekend. Certainly there can be a storm to precede that Arctic outbreak, producing some snow in the Mid-Atlantic region of the northeast U.S. in about a week or so. We're talking next Thursday or Friday time frame, and that is speculation at this point. The cold, however, I don't think it's speculation. I think that's coming across the country. It first enters into the northwestern, north central part of the U.S. later next week, and then will slide to the south and east, reaching the eastern U.S. at the end of the week going into Christmas weekend. Let's take a look at last night's ensemble run of the Canadian model. I think the Canadian model has had a pretty good handle on things, not only in the short term but in the longer term as well. We're looking at 500 millibar height anomalies, again with the ensemble run of the Canadian model. Beginning the day today, still very, very strong high latitude blocking signal showing up here in terms of higher heights than normal. This is higher pressure than normal over the usual areas of Hudson Bay and all the way up to Greenland. Meanwhile, deep upper level low situated right over the central part of the U.S. Now, this is that familiar omega-shaped upper air pattern here, and systems move slowly in an omega blocking type of upper level pattern. And this high pressure area over the northeastern part of Canada is playing a vital role in this storm system for the northeastern part of the U.S. over the next 24 to 36 hours or so, in that it is producing and locking in surface high pressure over southeastern Canada. That in turn acts as an anchor for the cold air mass in place across the northeastern part of the nation. Now let's move forward here in time, and we'll see what happens as we get into the upcoming weekend. This is now Friday night going into Saturday morning. Once this current storm system passes by New England later tomorrow into tomorrow night, it'll leave a widespread cold air mass in place. Most of the nation, virtually from coast to coast, and we'll see that in a moment here, will be colder than normal this upcoming weekend. You can see the upper level is kind of suggesting that as well, with deep upper level low spreading out across much of the nation over the upcoming weekend. Now we go into the early part of next week, and we'll see in a moment here. This is where a very, very cold air mass will dive southward across the polar region into the western part of Canada early in the middle part of next week, and we may get a bit of a break in temperatures, getting back to near normal or even slightly above normal in the middle part of or latter part of next week in the eastern states, but then eyes will turn to the north and west. We have an Arctic air invasion and an outbreak that will slide from western Canada all the way into the north central, northwestern part of the U.S. and then into the central and eastern states. Late next week, we're talking about leading right into the Christmas weekend. And that Arctic front associated with that late week frontal Arctic air outbreak could be very active indeed. We're talking maybe next Thursday, next Friday or so along the Mid-Atlantic coastline. There could be a storm that could lay down some snow preceding that Arctic air outbreak. Here we are into the latter part of next week, again looking at the ensemble run here. Very impressive upper level low situated here. This is a week from tomorrow. We're talking next Friday, December 23rd. Still impressive signs here of that negative NAO pattern, that negative AO pattern with high latitude blocking over the same region. Hudson Bay, Greenland, the northeastern part of Canada. We mentioned a couple videos ago that once a high latitude blocking sets up, it typically lasts a few weeks. And indeed, it's going to last a few weeks in this particular case here during December of 2022, something we may remember years down the road here. And a very impressive upper level low sitting near the eastern seaboard at the end of next week. Could certainly be a surface low pressure area near or just off the coastline at this particular time. Let's go out a little bit farther in time. And with a high latitude blocking pattern, again, systems generally move rather slowly. And here we go into next Saturday, December 24th, Christmas Eve, and we still have that upper level low situated right over the eastern part of the nation with high latitude blocking over northeastern Canada. Well, how does the height pattern, the 500 millibar height pattern, translate to temperatures? Here we're looking at the 850 millibar level. Again, the ensemble run of the Canadian model from 0Z last night. Now when I say 850 millibars, we're looking at the temperature anomalies here, the departures from normal. And we start off the day with some above normal conditions, a little bit off the surface here in the Mid-Atlantic region. And that's why we have some icing problems down at the surface level. Temperatures still hovering near the freezing mark throughout the suburban areas along the I-95 corridor region. Hence, some freezing rain, sleet, and even snow, even though there's a little bit warmer layer aloft, warmer than normal, in the a couple thousand feet off the ground level. Let's move forward here. And again, I mentioned up front that once this current major storm system passes on by New England, let's say in 36 hours or so, it'll leave behind a cold nation here, virtually below normal temperatures from coast to coast. You can see the Intermountain West all the way into the eastern states. Not severe cold, but certainly colder than normal for this time of the year, and an impressive extent, again, from all the way near the west coast to the east coast. This is Saturday morning. Now let's move forward here. And I mentioned also, start looking into western Canada, and here is way below normal temperature pattern here for western Canada by the time we get to the latter part of the upcoming weekend. And that is that Arctic air outbreak, a major outbreak coming next week. Here we go. Let's move forward here. It starts to spread into the western states initially. Notice still below normal, but not too far below normal in much of the eastern U.S. by the time we get to the middle part of next week. And indeed, we may return right about to normal, maybe slightly above normal, just ahead of this major Arctic frontal system that looks like it'll arrive next Friday or so. Again, it could be accompanied by a storm system. Here we go into Thursday of next week. We're talking a week from this morning, next Thursday, December 22nd. Very, very cold air extending all the way from Alaska into the central part of the U.S. That continues to push to the east in this time. And again, right about this time, there could very well be a storm system showing up along the Mid-Atlantic coastline, the northeast coastline. Could have some snow preceding this Arctic air outbreak in at least parts of the eastern U.S. Here we now are a week from tomorrow, next Friday, far below normal, northwestern Canada, far below normal, Tennessee Valley, much of the eastern half of the nation. Let's keep going out in time. Here we are on Christmas Eve, Saturday, December 24th, and let's go one more day all the way out to Christmas Day, and here we are on basically the eastern two-thirds of the nation. Very cold for the latter part of December. Well, let's get back to the short term, and this is the Canadian model run, the operational Canadian model run from 0Z last night. The total snowfall by Saturday morning, between this morning, Thursday morning, and Saturday morning, very, very significant snow accumulations up across upstate Pennsylvania, New York, interior part of New England, extending all the way from Pennsylvania to Maine over the next 24 to 48 hours or so. There certainly will be some sleet mixed in portions of Pennsylvania, let's say from central to northeastern part of Pennsylvania. That'll cut down snowfall accumulations, let's say roughly to about 6 inches, 8 inches or so from State College to Scranton. But once you get up into interior New York State and interior New England, you could be seeing totals of 12 to 18 inches over the next 24 to 48 hours or so. Certainly the maritime air mass that is causing a wintry mix in Pennsylvania, for example, will not make it all the way into interior New York or New England, hence a very significant snowfall of a foot or more in many locations over the next 24 to 48 hours or so. Meanwhile, I-95 corridor region, here's D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, all the way to Boston. Too much of an easterly flow of air associated with this system. We have a low pressure that'll move over and intensify over the Delmarva Peninsula, producing increasingly strong easterly winds. This time of the year, the western Atlantic Ocean is still seeing temperatures, water temperatures, well up in the 40s, for example. So any kind of an easterly wind will certainly bring in slightly mild or above freezing maritime air into the I-95 corridor region from D.C. to Philadelphia to New York to Boston. Go far interior sections, though, and it won't have an impact, and you'll have a significant snowstorm, let's say upstate New York, interior New England. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps from the operational run of the Canadian model here at 0Z last night. Again, earlier this morning we had icing, especially in the far northern and western suburbs of D.C., and that moved into the Philadelphia suburbs around 6 or 7 a.m. Even some snow mixed in the Philadelphia suburbs right now. This will continue to move to the north and east. Notice the primary low sitting over the upper Midwest this morning with heavy snow and still falling in Minnesota and especially in Wisconsin. Now let's keep pushing forward here. And we have snow accumulating upstate Pennsylvania and then moving into interior New York and New England. Again, a significant snowfall, and again with the low pressure area kind of hugging the coastline, there'll be an easterly component to the wind, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, Boston, and that'll push temperatures to above freezing, plain rain, and some of it can be heavy later today into tonight. But you go upstate New York and New England, especially those higher elevation locations, and you may end up with a foot or more of snow. Here we are into Saturday morning. It finally pulls away by late Saturday. Now Sunday morning, it leaves behind a relatively dry nation, but a relatively cold nation. Most of the nation this weekend will feature below normal temperatures, virtually from coast to coast. Let's quickly now walk through next week on last night's Canadian model run. Again, at this time, here we are in the middle part of next week. We have an Arctic air outbreak dropping south and east into the U.S. from western Canada, and by the time it reaches the eastern U.S., it'll become quite an unstable situation. This is next Thursday, a week from now. We have an Arctic front kind of charging to the south and east. Low pressure could form out ahead of this Arctic air frontal system, the leading edge of the real cold air coming into the eastern U.S. about a week from now, next Thursday or Friday. It's kind of speculation stage, but certainly seeing some significant signs of a very active frontal system in about a week, next Thursday or Friday. In fact, last night's Canadian model run dumps out some accumulating snow all the way into the Mid-Atlantic. This is now by early next Friday as that blast of Arctic air arrives in the Mid-Atlantic region of the northeast U.S. And this is a very wintry situation leading right into potentially a wintry situation leading right into the Christmas weekend. This is Friday, December 23rd. Go out a little bit farther in time, and here we go into Christmas Eve, Saturday the 24th. Very, very strong winds, very cold air mass in the core of the coldest air right here in this the upper part of the Midwest here by the time we get to Christmas Eve, and it slides eastward right towards the Mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. in time for Christmas Day. Of course, that's the 25th of December. So very interesting weather pattern, not only in the short term here with a significant snowstorm in interior New York, interior New England, heavy rain, strong winds along the immediate I-95 corridor region, but later next week an Arctic air invasion that could be preceded by some snow in the eastern part of the U.S. in about a week or so, next Thursday, Friday time frame, all leading up to a very cold Christmas weekend. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.